Hello and welcome to Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 293. I am Lisa Louise Cook. Have you ever wondered if you're using the right genealogy website for your research? There are a lot to choose from, but really there's a handful at the top that are really the largest websites available. The ones with the most records, DNA, building your family tree online, and we're talking about Ancestry.com, MyHeritage.com, and FamilySearch. Well, FamilySearch is kind of a no-brainer because that one is free, so it should very much be on your radar. But it is good to know how it stacks up with the other two so that when you start your genealogy research session, you know where to spend your time, which one's going to have what you need and be able to do the most for you. And when it comes to Ancestry and MyHeritage, of course, there is a subscription fee involved, and it's not cheap. So you want to make sure that when you plunk down your credit card, you are getting the most for your money and that you're making the right choice. So it's always good to go back and on a regular basis, maybe on a yearly basis, kind of reevaluate what these websites have to offer, which ones you're paying for, and whether or not you are in the right place at the right time. Well, recently I interviewed author Sunny Morton for the Family Tree Magazine podcast. Now, if you're not already aware of this, I do produce and host the Family Tree Magazine monthly podcast, as well as their Best Websites podcast. If those aren't on your podcast listening list, make sure and look those up in your favorite podcast app and subscribe. And on the Family Tree Magazine podcast, I was talking to Sunny because she had recently written an article for Family Tree Magazine comparing the big genealogy websites. Now, she's been doing this for several years. In fact, this all started when she was working here at Genealogy Gems, and we kind of came up with this idea about, gosh, we really need to do a head-to-head comparison. And she took that project on and did it for us here at Genealogy Gems. You've probably heard some of those past episodes. And she continues to keep her eye on that today. So we had a great conversation. It's always fun to talk about this and really dig into the numbers and do all the comparisons. But one of the things that often happens when Sunny and I get together is the interview ran kind of long. So I published kind of a consolidated, concise version of that in the Family Tree Magazine monthly podcast. You may have heard that. But I have the entire interview, and I really want to bring the whole thing to you because there was a lot more that we covered, and it expands on some of these ideas and how to make the best decisions and the nuances of what the different websites offer. So I want today to bring you the interview in its entirety so you can listen to it from start to finish. It's a really good refresher on what these websites have to offer, but it's also going to help you, I think, navigate where to spend your time and which ones to focus on at any given time. So let's jump right in and talk with Sunny Morton about comparing the big genealogy websites. And then at the end of the show, I've got a quick update for you on the latest going on with AI. All right, so here we go with Sunny Morton and comparing the big genealogy websites. The top 3 genealogy websites offer the tools and records that genealogists want. Those are Ancestry.com, FamilySearch.org, and MyHeritage.com. But how do you know which one is the best one for you? Well, author Sunny Morton tackles this question in her new article. It appears in the March 2025 issue of Family Tree Magazine, and she is here to help us out. Welcome back to the podcast, Sunny.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Hey, in your article, it's called Three's Company. You compare the various features and the records of Ancestry, FamilySearch, MyHeritage. One of the things that all genealogists want is historical records. But before we compare the numbers, I think I'd like to have you define for us, what is an historical record and does it differ in definition between the three?
It does. That's been one of the trickiest parts of this analysis. Way to cut right to the chase.
Yeah.
Start with the hard questions. You're right, absolutely, in leading with the question of, how many historical records do they have? Because that is what we're looking for as genealogists. And when you talk about the historical records, we're talking about something that was created in the past, hopefully contemporaneous to the time that our relatives were living, so that it represents hopefully more accurately than something created after the passage of a lot of time, where memories and perspectives might have clouded what was written down. So a historical record is something that we're looking at, really, that we expect represents historical reality as much as possible. It's old, Lisa.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Thank
old.
goodness.
That's
Yes.
what we're looking for. And now, you're right, though, that when we look at our different genealogy websites, it's easy to see some of these big numbers in the billions, that we've got billions and billions of records. Well, they're not all historical records. Some of them are tree records. Some of them are photographs. Some of them, and now each is a record of some kind, right? But
Yeah.
when we're talking strictly historical records, that's only a subtotal of that total amount, but it's still enormous. We can still talk about enormous numbers of historical records.
Yes. And I want to even drill down a little bit further on that, in that when, as a genealogist, as we get a record, let's say we find a baptismal certificate or a death certificate, and we think, oh, that's a record. But that's a document, and it might name several different people. So, do all three of the genealogy websites consider the document the record, or the mention of each individual person?
That's a good question. So generally what you'll find is they've recorded it by the primary person in the record. The person who passed away, the person who was born, is the primary person mentioned. But as you said, there are often several secondary people mentioned that are parents or witnesses, or an officiator, somebody like that. And sometimes those all get recorded as records because it is a record about the mom. It is a record that, so I have seen discrepant data on that, and I don't think that, I could put it on the line to say that each one does it a certain way, because I think it has changed over time too. There's been a lot of conversation about that in the past, of the maybe one of the companies saying, "Hey guys, let's all report numbers in the same way so that we're, you know, totally transparent," and maybe another company saying, we really like to report it this way because this is how it looks the best. And so, I'm going to back away from that one slowly and and just say that it might actually, they might be counting a birth record 3 times. Yes, because
Yes.
it's a record about a mom, a dad, and a baby.
I think that's probably very likely. And I think you're totally right. We really couldn't necessarily pin down each company to say in particular. But when you look at a record, let's say on Ancestry, it's going to say the primary person was this person, but it mentions these other things. Do you want to add this to that person on your
Yes,
tree? And that becomes their record. So
it is.
I would slant towards multiple records within a document. Does that sound
Right.
safe?
Yes, I think so. Well, there's multiple pieces of information for
Yes.
sure,
Yeah.
right? And we care about all of those pieces of information. And from the point of view of the company, they all had to be fielded. They all had to be,
Yes.
the data all had to be extracted. So why wouldn't they get credit for all of the additional data that they've extracted out of that record too?
Excellent point. And we are talking in the billions when we're talking about records. So I guess we don't have to worry too much that there isn't enough.
Right.
So let's get into the nitty gritty of the number of records that we're going to find at each of these websites and how they kind of stack up against each other. Can you give us kind of a general overview of the three?
Sure, I can. And I think it's important to recognize, I broke it down for you a little bit in the article, because it's not just how many total records, but where and when. And we care about that because we're always asking a question that has a where and a when. attached to it, right? So that does matter a lot. So Ancestry, about 60 billion total records. And I notice though, when I look at the card catalog, I spend a lot of time looking at these catalogs and running my analyses based on, how big are these collections relative to the entire data set here. And the top 20 collections over at Ancestry, that's a very small number of their total collections, right? They've got, thousands of collections, but those top 20 collections account for a third of their record total. So we're talking U.S. city directories, yearbooks, user-submitted family trees. Remember, total records, not just historical records. So they're including family tree data in there, newspaper indexes. So these, I don't want to say bloated because that has a negative connotation, but these enormous numbers that we're seeing right now are really, that explosion is thanks to the ability of AI to extract these names from the records that I just talked about, directories, yearbooks, newspapers, right? It can, quote and unquote, read through those old pages and pull out all those names and the data we're looking for. It's amazing technology, but what it means is the big numbers in those billions really are representative of records that have been pulled out from those sorts of records from the last 2 centuries or so. So if you're doing research in the colonial period of Australia, for example, or even the colonial period of the United States, those billions aren't going to help you quite as much. Right? They're going to be more, the billions are really the more recent records that are extracted from print sources or that are being pulled in from people's trees. So and if you're researching within the last 150 years or so, you're going to love it, right? Because they're pulling in fantastic resources that otherwise you might not have found.
Yeah, for those of us who, were working with these websites when they first came out, 20 years ago or whatever, boy, you were not talking billions back then. And I was looking at your article, which, as I said, mentioned, is in the Family Tree magazine. And you were saying generally the estimates, 60 billion for Ancestry, 66.24 for FamilySearch, and 32 billion for MyHeritage. On the surface, that might look a little bit like MyHeritage doesn't have as many, and perhaps they don't. But you really touched on something I hope everybody heard, which is the role that artificial intelligence is playing, the ability to improve indexing. A lot of times these companies have images of records, but haven't been able to really take full advantage of them because technology wasn't there yet. But that is changing. And would I guess that perhaps your answer might be, it's all just changing all the time?
It all changes all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned that comparison with MyHeritage, because when we go over and look at their collection catalog, their largest 5 collections, so even smaller than Ancestry's, their largest 5 accounted, when I looked last, and again, things change, accounted for more than 40% of their total, and their family tree indexes and then newspaper name indexes, because they have started pulling over enormous indexes from oldnews.com, their sister company that is their newspaper correlate. As the Ancestry's got newspapers.com, MyHeritage has oldnews.com. And so they're pulling that in. And so a difference that I would see if I'm comparing those commercial partners in terms of records is I would say the difference in the US centric focus. So Ancestry is a US company with deep roots in gathering US records and records from countries where a lot of people immigrated from. So whereas MyHeritage is an Israeli company, and they have a little bit more of a global perspective, a lot less US centric, a lot more Eurocentric, especially continental Europe. And because as an Israeli company, they have a strong interest in Jewish research, also sort of the Jewish diaspora and some of those parts of the world too. So you really do have a little bit different priority level, I guess, in who they know their target user to be. And I guess it depends on, like, is my research question really primarily a deep U.S. research question or U.S. immigrant to another country question, or is it more of a outside the United States question? And if it's the first, I would veer left to Ancestry first. And if it's the second, I would veer right to MyHeritage first. But I wouldn't not visit the other one, because they both do have a lot of really great content for the other kind of perspective.
And FamilySearch being the third player, you can't miss because they're
Oh my
free.
goodness.
So,
Right.
and I would say probably, while there's a huge amount of US, they really are an international focus, correct?
So yes, so FamilySearch is a totally different ballgame. It really is. And first, like you said, because it's free, so everybody, you don't have to decide whether to subscribe. You just have to go there, right? And you can harvest things from it, and it's fabulous that way. You're right. So as a nonprofit, they have a global focus, so they don't even have to pick a target customer, Lisa. They don't have to figure out who's got the time and the resources to devote a subscription, financial subscription commitment. They don't have to do that. So they say who's researching their family history, and who is, and what parts of the world have had some record loss maybe that we need to really focus on, or that nobody else has focused on and brought those online. So they're looking to at that truly global picture to represent, Central and South America, to represent nations of Africa, to parts of Asia. They're starting to harvest for there. So they do have that truly global perspective, and not worrying about having that target customer. And then FamilySearch, the numbers are kind of tricky with them because there's so much going on. You can't just get a simple record number at FamilySearch because they've got their whole collections of things so 13 billion that are searchable names, and then another 5+ billion that are record images that are not searchable yet. But how many people are probably mentioned in those 5 billion images? Lots and lots and lots, right? And so how do you even compare them? You can't quite. And so the best thing you can do is really try to make an estimate. But because you've got, then to pile on top of that, you've got their digitized book collection that they don't take an individual record count from. So there's, on top of that, you've got more than 500,000 of those digitized books. Their largest 20 searchable collections, I ran that analysis too, comprise less than 20% of their total.
Interesting.
So I would say more collections, more collections that are relatively bigger and maybe more diverse. So I think that's just a little bit of insight into that.
Excellent. Well, and as always, you can go in and look at the catalog and browse to get a sense of what any of these three have before you ever make a purchase. So, you want to make sure that you're seeing lots of records in the area that you're trying to research, which I think makes a lot of sense, and kind of brings us to maybe take a step back and do an overview of primary strengths. We've kind of had a sense now on the record size, but if you had just a couple seconds or minutes in an elevator with somebody, what would be your elevator speech for each one, and what the primary strength of that website really is?
Well, I think I'd go back and reiterate the US-centric focus of Ancestry. Absolutely. If I'm doing research, I'm going to make sure that I visit both Ancestry and FamilySearch if I'm doing US research. If I'm doing research outside the United States, I'm definitely going to both FamilySearch and MyHeritage. And if I'm looking for people and records in other languages, I'm especially going to look close at MyHeritage because of their language translation technologies, because the fact that they are the site that has, when you think about, it's not just the records they have, but the people who are using them, because you want to connect with other researchers, right? Descendants maybe who are still in that homeland, or maybe they've gone someplace else, but they know things because you share that common ancestry, but maybe they speak a different language. And MyHeritage makes their site available in a lot more languages than any of these other sites. So that is also something to consider as you're using them, is who am I looking for? I'm looking for people who speak German. Oh, I think I'm gonna spend some time over here on MyHeritage looking through all the German trees, and recognizing that there's going to be a lot of German speakers over here on this site. Now, that's not to say that there aren't people in many languages working on the other sites. They do make them available in other languages, but not nearly as many as MyHeritage. So that's a strength over there, I'm going to say.
And a great example, again, of what technology can do. It's one thing to have the records, but it's what you can do with the records and how you can make them accessible. And MyHeritage using the language translation, FamilySearch now in their labs doing the full text recognition, which is opening up the doors on records like probate records. Will
It's
oh,
crazy.
it's
All the
amazing.
when I see genealogy posts from my friends on social, it's all about I can't tell you how many of those posts start with full text search. Like,
Yeah.
love that full text search. Look what I found and stars, and they're so excited about it. So yes, the technology piece is really important. And I think it's going to continue to be even more important. We see MyHeritage with their amazing photo technologies. So when we look at images as record types and what we do with those images and how powerful images are, not only to teach us about the past, but then to turn around and share that with family members. I promise they want to look at a picture more than they want to read my nicely written narrative. So
Yeah.
MyHeritage really has invested so much in their photo technologies that are really fantastic to be able to make that really sparkle if you want to share those pictures with your relatives.
Great point. And this really brings us to one more significant area of comparison, which is DNA. It seems like practically everybody has had their DNA tested at this point, but how do they stack up with each other? And I'll just do a little tease. We know one of these is not like the other, right?
Right. That's totally true. So FamilySearch does not have DNA tools on its website. So you can go compare your tree data all you want to and harvest records, but you're not going to get to compare your DNA data on FamilySearch. That's just a direction they've not invested. They're too busy filming the world's records all over the world. So we'll let them do that, right? Because Ancestry, honestly, Ancestry and MyHeritage are doing a fantastic job of trying to understand um, the nuances of the DNA technologies as they're advancing, and then helping us understand them to try to understand it itself, but then to try to communicate that in a way that an everyday person is going to just look at it and at a glance be able to understand what they're seeing. So I really just off the bat want to give both of those companies a lot of credit for making something that's hard more accessible to us as individuals who are maybe not, geneticists and scientists. And they've done a really great job helping us find the stories in our DNA with the ethnicity. Both of them have wonderful and getting better ethnicity or biogeographical predictions where that will tell you, so your DNA has a genetic signal, like you have such a strong association genetically with this place that we see it in your DNA because other people from this place share that little bit of a genetic signature. So you have that connection inside of you. And they're getting more and more accurate and more granular. I know that MyHeritage just released, they redid their entire ethnicity estimate. They launched it a few months ago, and then they're like, not totally satisfied. And they pulled it back, did a little bit more work behind the scenes, and then re-released it. And I'm seeing some really nice things being said about as people are taking a new look at those revisions. And I think one good thing that maybe a lot of people don't understand, Lisa, is you should continue to log in and look at those results over and over again. Because, every 3 to 6 months or so, because your ethnicity predictions will change, not because you are any less Scottish or Mexican, but because the ability to understand what part of Mexico, or more confidently Scottish versus Northern Ireland, or that kind of thing. That's all still evolving, and we will see more and more of that keep happening. And then the other thing we'll keep seeing is more and more matches. I've noticed that there's been a huge push lately on new tests that have come through. And I noticed my match list has kind of generated more new matches lately. So I think we're seeing a bit of a renaissance and the
Yeah.
testing rate slowed down for a little while, but I think we've got a next wave of testers coming through looking for connections, curious about where they're from and who they're related to. And so we see the matching technologies are both really good on both places. Both of them have they're kind of comparable, but different tools that try to help you figure out how you're connected to that DNA match you see. We've got the theory of family relativity over at MyHeritage, which gives you a person-to-person perspective on, okay, we think that we can draw these lines between you and your and your match. We think that these are the connections. The path goes from you to your dad to his mom and then on over to your match. Whereas over at Ancestry, it's more like, okay, these are all the people who have listed that they're descended from this common ancestral couple. So it's just looking at it a little bit differently. There's reliance on tree data, which we both know is only as good as the tree data could be. And sometimes despite our best efforts or the best efforts of other people, the tree data doesn't necessarily reflect the same as the genetic data. So there's still a lot to work out there when you're looking at these matches, but both of these companies have gotten really good at helping us understand what we're looking at and giving us better access. For a long time, MyHeritage was the one that let us see shared matches of matches, and Ancestry didn't. And Ancestry opened that up finally, and that was a fantastic boon for everyone who had kind of reached a dead end and thought that they couldn't go much further with the matches they had until they could sort of peer over their match's shoulder, so to speak, and be like, well, how are you connected to so-and-so? Well, how are you? Oh, you guys are actually mother and son. That makes a difference, right? Now I look a little bit differently at how I'm figuring out my connection to you. So those tools are really important too.
Today's episode is sponsored by newspapers.com. They really are your go-to resource for unlocking the stories of your ancestors. You can dive into the newspapers where your family's history just unfolds as you search nearly 1 billion records, and you can do that in seconds. Newspapers.com offers an unparalleled treasure trove of historical newspapers, providing a window into the past. With papers from the 17th century all the way to today, newspapers.com is the largest online newspaper archive. It's a gold mine for anyone seeking to uncover stories from the past. So whether you're a seasoned genealogist or you're just starting on this exciting journey, newspapers.com makes it really easy to search for things like obituaries, birth announcements, and those everyday stories that shaped your family. It's kind of like having a time machine at your fingertips. And here's the best part. I'm so happy to tell you that our listeners get an exclusive offer. Use promo code Genealogy Gems for a 20% discount on your subscription. It's Genealogy Gems all together, no spaces. And you go to newspapers.com, put in Genealogy Gems, you're going to get 20% off your subscription, and you're going to start finding newspaper articles. So I wouldn't wait any longer. Go sign up today at newspapers.com and embark on a journey of discovery. You know, sometimes I think it's easier to find your family history than to find a way to share it in a way that your family would really be interested and enjoy it, in a way that's not going to take you forever to put it together. Well, I have a solution for you. It's our new sponsor, MyCanvas. MyCanvas.com is really the place to bring your family history to life. MyCanvas connects with your Ancestry account to help you create keepsakes like family history books and calendars and family tree posters. And after you order, you can share a link with your family. They can take a look at your project online. They could even purchase a copy of it. The MyCanvas products are great for gifting or displaying at family reunions. So this is the perfect time to start planning and producing some of these wonderful materials from MyCanvas. Pricing for these types of keepsakes that you can create start at just $30. So this is a really affordable gift. And best of all, you can receive a 10% discount on your first MyCanvas order with our special coupon code. So jot this down. It's GGEMS, all together in capital letters. Use that at mycanvas.com to get 10% off and start creating shareable, memorable legacy gifts for your family. That's mycanvas.com. Some people have run their DNA with a different company. They may just have raw data. How do they compare? Which one would you go to with just the raw data to upload?
So Ancestry is not going to take your raw data. They want you to test there, but MyHeritage will. And that's something I love about MyHeritage, because they recognize that people have already tested by the time they found them sometimes, right? And they've got this data source already, and it's no different. My data is going to be, my DNA is the same whether I test it with you or with somebody else. And so they'll take your upload from other companies, and there are a few basic pieces of information you get for free. And then for $29, you can get access to all of their advanced DNA tools per test. And if you're working with analysis, that $29 that's totally worth it, right? That for that test, you'll have that forever. And you can also keep access to those advanced tools if you're a subscriber. If you plan to maintain a subscription, that's great. But if you might be kind of in and out, and that's some advice that I give people sometimes, is if they're like, well, I see that there's value to both Ancestry and MyHeritage, but my budget really only allows me one of them. I'm like, just rotate your subscriptions. Spend a year with one of them and exhaust everything that you can there, and then take a break from them for a year, go to the other one. Your tree will still be there. They're not going to erase your data, right? You'll start accumulating hints again over there. And by the time you get back to them 6 months or a year later, then come take another look. You're going to have new hints to look at, new tree hints, new record hints. And I think that that's certainly a reasonable way to go.
Excellent point. Yes. Another area that really interests genealogists, people who are doing their family history research, is, of course, building their family tree. And one of the things I always encourage people to do is, first and foremost, get a genealogy software database, use it on their computer. But there's so many advantages to also having your tree online. Can you explain for everybody the differences and compare the three: Ancestry, MyHeritage, and FamilySearch, what type of tree they're really working with?
Great. Well, I'm going to lump Ancestry and MyHeritage together in terms of the fact over there, you're going to be building your own individual private tree. Now, if you care to share it publicly or with selected people, you can, but it is your tree. Nobody's going to touch it, for better or for worse. Nobody is going to touch it. It's all yours, and that's how you build on an individual tree model over there at those two companies. FamilySearch is meant to be an open and collaborative, giant community-based tree. So the ideal is that there's one profile on the FamilySearch tree for every person who's ever lived. So if you just imagine the great big tree or web or whatever you call it of the world, and then you hook yourself into it. So you add yourself via your parents, your grandparents, until you get to a deceased person that's already in the tree. So you find your entry point to the tree, and then it is community from there on out. So nothing is private for deceased individuals. So you recognize that you're working in a public and collaborative place, which of course has its ups and downs, right? Because other collaborators might know things that you don't. And they might have documents, they might have photos or family lore that has not reached your branch of the family, and vice versa. They also might not know what they're talking about. So they might have some bad information, or they might be misinterpreting some pieces of historical data. And so there are some tug of wars sometimes that happen on different parts of the tree, saying, no, that's not quite right. There's a place to keep collaborative notes there. There's a lot of emphasis on adding your sources. I think a lot of responsible researchers, when the public tree opened, a lot of them were kind of leery. Like, I don't know if I want to put my stuff there. I don't know if people keep changing things, and I don't know if I believe anything that people are doing there. But they've improved the numbers of sources that they have. The ratio of sources per the number of people has gone up quite a bit. So lots more source citations on the public tree. And lots more responsible commentary of saying, okay, I don't know this for sure, or here's my comment on why I did this. I've added a reason statement. They ask you to add one of those for every time you attach a record to something, to someone's profile. They say, why do you want to attach this? And you say your reason. All the information matches, or the discrepancy you see in the first name is because they changed their name later in life, and I know this because this. So you can share your thinking behind the tree data you're adding. So, but it's a totally different model, Lisa. I'm glad you brought that up.
And interesting that you're bringing up the sources. So you're saying MyHeritage and Ancestry, of course, you have your own individual tree. You can make it private or public. Do either one of those actually require you to give a source or attach one of their records for each piece of information that you put in? Or are we free to put in whatever we want because we are looking at other people's trees that are public?
So they don't require that, but I will tell you that they both have tree checkers that will ding you. And
Yeah.
if you care, like I went through an old tree. I went and found a tree that I hadn't touched for maybe 10 or 12 years, and I loaded it into a tree checker. And boy, I spent a lot of time like cleaning up little details. I hadn't put a death date over here, or I hadn't attached the source here. And that is one of the things they'll ding you on is, yeah, you've got this piece of information here, but you haven't cited a source for it. And so they encourage your awareness of it, but they don't require it. And Lisa, it is true that, as you said, many people keep their primary trees offline. And so they don't want to take all the time on their online trees to populate them with every record, right? They're really more using their online trees as bait, right? So they're keeping everything they know offline. They'll put a skeleton tree online just to start collecting those record hints because it's an automated process. And then it makes it a little easier to just sort of glance at your tree and be like, okay, who's got a lot of hints that I want to go and look at? So that is one reason that people put their online trees on, sometimes just in skeleton form, or if they're building theoretical trees or what we call maybe quick and simple trees for their DNA matches, just think of it as kind of a sketch tree or a draft tree to say, I think I might be connected to this person in this way, but I'm still working on it. So you'll see some of those trees too that aren't well sourced. But everybody says be leery of a tree that's not well sourced. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that they haven't shared their source information. And yeah, you're welcome to ask them, hey, I noticed you seem to know something I don't. Would you be willing to share your source information for that? Looks like you haven't had a chance to add that there. So if you can just be really polite and sort of assume the best.
Or at a minimum, see it as a clue, and you
See
can
it
go
as a
and do
clue
the
and
work.
yep,
Yeah.
follow it up for yourself and say, well, I wonder if they think this, I wonder if I can trace it back to where they might have found that information. Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Well, and you've already highlighted another difference in the comparison between the three, and that MyHeritage and Ancestry will let you build multiple trees.
Yes.
So you can test some of those theories versus we're not going to be doing that at FamilySearch.
No, you're not. You're working on one big tree, and that can get a little overwhelming. They do have that little thing that says, tell me how I'm related to this person again. So when you up and over and then down and across and over, and you're working on, 4 or 5 layers of removal, it's easy to get lost. But over in MyHeritage and Ancestry, when you build individual trees, like, well, I know this one's on my husband's paternal side, for example, then you can segment out them a little bit better. And sometimes it's a little easier to keep track of what you're doing.
Another area of interest to people in comparing their family trees is around searchability. The trees get large, and we want to be able to find people and information pretty quickly. How do they stack up FamilySearch, MyHeritage, and Ancestry against each other in the area of searchability?
I think they're all really excellent, Lisa. I think that there's a great portal on each one that you can enter either minimal or more complex amounts of information. I think one thing that we might think about a little differently is sometimes you're like, well, I'm not using the FamilySearch tree myself. I haven't built myself into it, so therefore I can't use it. But that's not true, Lisa. You can go search it. So if you wonder yourself, well, I wonder what other people have found about my great-grandfather. And then just go ahead and go do a tree search on FamilySearch for your great-grandfather and see if you find them. So you don't have to be using the tree yourself to go harvest from the tree. Now, once you're in there, you might be like, well, they don't have this piece of info. Guess what? I know that they don't. And so that might put you over the edge to want to start contributing to it or building yourself into it, but you don't have to. So you can think of it as a one-way street toward yourself if you hesitate to put things on a public tree in that way. Just think of it as a place to harvest from to begin with.
That's a great point. And I agree with you. I think that the searchability for all three just keeps getting better and better. And that in itself can be a strategic way to go about your family history research and kind of uncover issues, uncover new clues,
right?
And be able to target people very quickly. Finally, think that photos and stories and memories and sharing, I mean, that's kind of like the next stage after we find lots of great information about family. We are also interested in, though, in keeping that and connected to the tree. So how do the three big websites compare in terms of, I mean, what's your opinion on the photos and the memories and the stories collection and attachment to the tree?
So, they're all still a little bit quirky, and I think that they all still, their best functionality is still all on the apps. I've noticed like the best tools for story building and photo usage are app driven. And I don't know that our audience of Family Tree users is really all app driven. I like my big screen. I do I do a lot on a big screen, especially if I'm working in photos or if I'm trying to storyboard a little story and put together something that's a little bit of a video narrative. I much prefer to work on a little bit bigger device than the app. So there are a couple of limitations there. Some of the features or they might just be released first on an app and then eventually make it over to the full website version. But I would say that you're almost always going to find the newest and best, most advanced of those tools on the apps first. And then that said, I think they're all still works in progress. And I think the most valuable, straightforward ones are the AI generated life histories, brief life histories that they write for you that you can look at from an ancestral profile. You can say they generate a little AI story and so and so was born on this date. And so they're all the same that way, but they're nice because you can go look at them and be like, oh, it's missing this. Or it didn't realize, like I didn't realize that I hadn't put the 1880 census in. And so the AI story doesn't include the time they lived in Denver. So that is a really good checker for me in terms of have I put what I want into that tree to make sure all the data is there to populate that little AI driven story that they create for you. So I do know that, MyHeritage has released its My Stories tool resource, and that is still very new, but I think that's a really promising resource as far as building recent generation, living generation stories and capturing those and putting those in a format that we want. So that's one that I'm especially looking at right now for story building.
And it seems to me, too, in comparing them, that MyHeritage has really just taken a big leap forward in terms of photos and helping you work with your old family photos.
Oh, they're so fun.
Enhancing and
Oh,
colorizing and
goodness,
animating.
and all the things. Yeah. And and they were real pioneers in
They
the
were.
animation process, and they were really bold and brave to put that out there. And some of the early ones were some went really well and some didn't. And then they have this next generation that you can use, and the animation on those I think is much better and beautiful. Actually, I've seen some really gorgeous animations of these, and while they don't represent historical reality necessarily, because they're sort of an imaginative interpretation of how to turn that picture into maybe a several second video animation, it brings it to life in the same way that we bring records to life, that we have to make our best guesses on what we're filling in the gaps. That's what we do when we look at records and then try to build a story out of those records, is that we're looking closely, and as best we can tell, the records are telling us this, that, wow, she lost 2 children in the space of 6 months, and then her mother died. And I can see that there was a cholera epidemic going on, and it makes me wonder whether this, and this. And so really, we're trying to fill in the gaps in the records in a comparable way that some of these technologies use to animate our pictures to create something a little more lifelike themselves.
And they do cite their source in a
They
sense. They
do.
watermark them and let you
Yep.
know that they were AI generated. And I think most importantly, they're helping us get the next generation excited and interested. Not everybody wants to be a genealogist, but I think everybody can be kind of entranced by that amazing animation that might start to spur additional questions like, who are they and what was their story? So that's always exciting stuff. I want to wrap up the family tree comparison real quickly, just to say, going back to that idea of having your primary database on your own computer, how do they compare in terms of compatibility as far as syncing up? Some people would really like to be able to sync up their database they're using on their computer with their online tree.
So all of them have software that work with them. MyHeritage has its own native family tree software that you can download and use in companion with what you're using online, Family Tree Builder, and that's free. If I remember right, especially, I don't think you even need to subscribe to have that. I think that it's free. I know that Ancestry syncs well with Family Tree Maker. Originally, they were part of the same company, and they've since gone different directions, but Family Tree Maker still works really hard to sync with your Ancestry tree. And I know that Roots Magic and other softwares will sync with, they'll help pull from the FamilySearch tree. Remember, it's the whole world's tree. And so you're pulling part of it, the roots that are closest to you and branches, that it will pull into Roots Magic, as well as they've got syncability with other websites as well. So I think that's worth a whole separate conversation at some point, looking at the primary syncability of the different software options.
And if syncing up is really your number one priority, then that's where I think you start, because each one has limitations on who they are compatible with and who they are not. So you want to make sure that whoever you're subscribing to and working with your online tree is going to be compatible with your desktop tree. This is just really invaluable. Thank you so much for helping us compare the largest 3 genealogy websites out there: Ancestry.com, FamilySearch.org, and MyHeritage.com. You can get Sunny's complete article in Family Tree Magazine's March-April 2025 issue. It's well worth the read. As always, it's wonderful to talk with you, Sunny. And folks can follow up with you at your website, correct?
SunnyMorton.com.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up next, an important update on artificial intelligence. Today's episode is sponsored by MyHeritage, a global discovery platform enjoyed by 110 million people worldwide. MyHeritage has it all and offers a full-service experience that bridges your past, present, and future. The MyHeritage DNA Kit reveals your ethnic origins and finds your new relatives based on shared DNA. It's popular all over the world, and their constantly growing DNA database means that more matches to new relatives are just around the corner. You'll receive a percentage breakdown of your ethnic origins from 42 supported regions and weekly email updates as new DNA matches are found. It's also the leading DNA service for anyone with European origins. Make the most of your DNA results with a MyHeritage subscription and access advanced tools for genetic genealogy, like the theory of family relativity, autoclusters, shared ancestral places, and much more. Order your kit today at myheritage.com/DNA. Already taken a DNA test with another service? Upload your DNA data to MyHeritage for free to receive DNA matches and access new discoveries. That's myheritage.com/DNA. Today's podcast is also brought to you by Archives, your trusted resource for researching your family history. So Archives is a vast repository of historical records offering a seamless journey through your family's past. Imagine discovering long-lost relatives, exploring genealogical documents, and tracing the roots that define your story. Archives makes research quick and easy. That's what it does best, and it does it with an intuitive approach to genealogy. They keep their search tools simple, but behind the scenes, their extensive record collections are paired with powerful technology to deliver valuable results. Archives is an invaluable resource if you want to make your family history research simple and affordable. Just visit archives.com and let your family history journey begin. And let them know that Genealogy Gems sent you. Visit archives.com or head to our show notes and you'll find a link that'll take you directly there, archives.com. Now, before I let you go, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I want to give you an update on some of the latest releases when it comes to artificial intelligence. If you are a premium member, I hope you've been enjoying our deep dives into using AI for genealogy research. It's really been incredible. I mean, this is one of the biggest, if not the biggest advancement that's happened in, I can't remember how long. I guess things you'd put in this category would be the internet coming online, Ancestry coming online, Google coming online, I might even throw YouTube into that category, but nothing really kind of compares with what I think AI is doing. It's a game changer. It is really a game changer. It's not replacing us. It's not replacing anything else, but it is an amazing tool that can be used across the board. It reminds me so much of when Google came out, and I would start talking about it here on the show and say, hey guys, we got to start using this. It wasn't built for genealogy, but boy, is it amazing for finding information. Well, AI is really replacing Google. That's the direction that this is all going. And that brings me to this update. So in the premium shows that we've done most recently, on the last one, I used Grok. So it's grok.com. And before that, we used Gemini. Well, Gemini is owned by Google, and they just released a big update that I wanted to tell you about. Last Friday, they announced that there are new Gemini app features, and they are available to try at no cost. They are bringing new and upgraded features to Gemini users, including deep research. Oh, does that sound familiar? That's what we see over at Grok. And it's on 2.0 Flash Thinking. There's something called Gems, which is perfect for us, right? So let's get into this and go through the announcement that they did on their website. First off, they talk about 2.0 Flash Thinking Experimental gets you new features and a longer context window. And as you know, the amount of what you can keep on the window at any given time can have an effect on the ongoing conversation that you're having with Gemini and what you're trying to do is in terms of a project. So they said here, today we are starting a rollout on an upgraded version of our 2.0 Flash Thinking experimental model that supports added features like file upload. Well, that's essential, I think, for us because we want to upload stuff about our genealogy to give Gemini context. We were doing that using Grok. It says this model, which is trained to break down prompts into a series of steps to strengthen its reasoning capabilities and deliver better responses, now has better efficiency and speed. And now Gemini Advanced users will have access to 1 million token context window. That's the amount that can be held on the window with 2.0 Flash Thinking Experimental. Now they're talking about advanced users, which means subscribers. What I recommend is if you haven't used it before, go use the free version. You'll find you can do several different interactions and then it'll either slow down or stop because there's limitations. But you can do a 1-month free trial. Last time I looked, they were offering a 1-month free trial. You could get a lot of stuff done in just 1 month. And that free trial is up for their subscription service, which they call Gemini Advanced. And that's where you're going to get this new expanded thinking experimental version. And this is really, I think, their effort in going head-to-head against Grok. So definitely exciting to see that coming together with Gemini. The next thing they talked about here was deep research. It says it's even smarter, rolling out for everyone to try. So they say in December, we pioneered a new product category in Gemini with deep research. It saves you hours of time as your personal AI research assistant, searching and synthesizing information from across the web in just minutes. Again, that merging of Google search together with artificial intelligence and the large language models. And it helps you discover sources from across the web that you may not have found otherwise. Today, we're upgrading deep research with Gemini 2.0 Flash Thinking Experimental. And this enhances Gemini's capabilities across all research stages, from planning and searching to reasoning, analyzing, and reporting, creating higher quality multi-page reports that are more detailed and insightful. Gemini now shows its thoughts while it browses the web, giving you real-time look into how it's solving your research task. And this is something that Grok was doing. We did this in our last premium show, and it shows you the thinking that's going on behind the scenes, how it comes to its decision and its final output. They say we've seen incredible enthusiasm about deep research, and we're rolling it out today so that anyone will be able to try it across the globe in 45 languages. Just select deep research in the new prompt bar or model dropdown. Gemini users can try deep research a few times a month at no cost. So just a few times. And then advanced users get expanded access to deep research to save even more time on their projects. So that's with the free trial or a subscription. And they say that Gemini is not just a helpful assistant, it's your personal AI-powered assistant, or assistant researcher, if you will, which understands you and makes every interaction feel tailored to you. Today, we're enhancing the Gemini experience with a new experimental capability called personalization. So with personalization, Gemini connects you with your Google apps and services, beginning with search, to deliver responses that are even more tailored to your individual needs. For example, you can ask Gemini for restaurant recommendations and it will reference your recent food-related searches. Or ask for travel advice and Gemini will respond on destinations you've previously researched. And you can enable this by selecting personalization, experimental, from the model drop-down, and you remain in control of your search history and can always disconnect. So the main thing here is it's using your search history. Now, they're using kind of everyday examples, but as we would be doing our genealogy research, if it knows we're doing things within the context typically of family history research, then it's going to kind of incorporate that and lean that direction. Much like my activity with Google searching. Doesn't that sound familiar? So I always talk in my videos and in my book about that my activity, if you have that turned on with your free Google account, is going to keep track of where you're going. Kind of creepy to be stalked, right? But it's actually very helpful in terms of tailoring the kinds of results that you're getting so that they are more leaning towards the kinds of things you'd be looking for, because you might be doing this on a regular basis. Okay, let's jump to the apps because they have here connected apps are even more powerful. And it says here, now, starting in English, they're going to have this available in the English language, additional apps that connect to Gemini, including Calendar, Google Calendar, Notes, Tasks, and Photos are becoming available on 2.0 Flash Thinking Experimental. With this thinking model, Gemini can better tackle complex requests like prompts that involve multiple apps because the new model can better reason over all requests, break it down into distinct steps, and assess its own progress as it goes. So in one single prompt, you can ask Gemini, like, look up an easy cookie recipe on YouTube, add the ingredients to my shopping list, and find my grocery stores that are still open nearby. How could we use that for genealogy? Probably could, right? Put these things into my notes and, so just be thinking genealogy when they give you these examples. And it says in the coming weeks, we're going to be adding Google Photos to the list of apps that Gemini can interact with so that you can easily ask for help based on your pictures. For example, Gemini can look at photos from your recent trip and create a travel itinerary based on the places you visited. Or you can ask Gemini to recall information, like when your driver's license expires. Well, we can see how much we want it to invade our life, but just know that that's possible if you're using Google Photos. If you're a heavy Google user, then Gemini might be one that you're going to lean towards, and this integration is going to be the enticement to continue to select Gemini over other large language model AIs. Now, this one I think is pretty cool. It says, Gems are now available for everyone. Gems lets you customize Gemini to create your own personal AI expert on any topic. And they're starting to roll this out to everyone at no cost in the Gemini app. You can get started with one of their pre-made gems, or you can make them on your own. Just go to the Gems Manager on desktop, write instructions, give it a name, and then chat with it whenever you want. You can also upload files when creating a custom gem. Now, that sounds short and concise. There's a lot there, my friends. And so I've been playing with this. I think there's some pretty exciting opportunities we have in terms of using this for genealogy. And so stay tuned, because I'm going to be sharing those with you in here on the podcast as well as in video form. We'll be deep diving into this in our premium videos and our live streams. So if you're not aware, if you're a premium member, twice a month we get together and we do a live stream. And since AI was the number one preferred topic in my recent survey of premium members, that's what we've been spending our time on recently. And I've been showing you kind of step by step how to use it. Well, this new Gems feature with Gemini, I think really opens up an opportunity to kind of custom tailor, I guess you'd call them apps for yourself based on what you do on a regular basis. So be sure you keep an eye on the newsletter. That's where I will be announcing upcoming videos and live stream sessions where we're going to be really digging into this. I'm going to show you how to do this. I went through some of the tutorials. It sounds simple, but actually I think to do it well, we'll have to be methodical about it. And there's a lot of instructions there. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm going to show you the most concise, efficient way to do this to really accomplish some fun goals. So that is the latest. You'll find Gemini at gemini.google.com. This is the direction things are going. I believe it will replace Google eventually. And then the question becomes, as all these different AIs compete with each other, which one is really going to kind of end up at the top? But for us on a daily basis, these are our shovels, our tools, and that's how we're going to use them to be much better genealogists. If you want to get the show notes for this episode, they are over on my website. Go to genealogygems.com, and under podcast, you can go to episode 293, and you will get the show notes there. If you are a premium member, I also have, of course, the cheat sheet version, the PDF download. It is ad-free. It is the concise bullet points of all the important things we've talked about in this episode. Thanks so much for listening, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.